The filler might be the most distasteful flaw of the show. Technically, the entire show is filler, but this show has filler for the filler. I know this sounds convoluted, but bear with me. What is considered filler is anything that has little or nothing to do with the main plot. So the episodes without Anakin, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Padme, clone troopers, or the main villains as the protagonists, I considered those filler. Some of these filler episodes are bottle episodes, which are purposely cheap so the producer can save their money for a later episode or arcs that will require more funds. Now before we start, most of my complaints will be in regards of the writing. The first episode of the filler arc that we will be looking at is Mercy Mission, aka the C-3PO and R2-D2 adventure arc. It starts off with the Republic going on a relief mission on a planet full of not Ewoks because it's been having earthquakes. What makes this so incredibly boring is the fact that we, as the viewers, never got to see the disaster. What makes a good disaster story is that you get to see the destruction take place. Back to the story, we see that R2-D2 and C-3PO are the protagonists. At least these characters are bearable compared to the others you will see. However, when looking at the ship, you will see all these clone troopers armed with these tanks and blasters. Why you bring this for a relief mission? It would be as if George W. Bush brought tanks to help out New Orleans after Katrina.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Not the most efficacious choices for equipment. There is nothing wrong with having some weapons, but it looks as if they're prepared for combat. You can tell this is a bottle episode because they didn't want to design new tools for the relief mission. Once they get to the planet, the not Ewoks don't speak English and C-3PO needs to translate for the clones. These creatures are just cringy, but at least the clones are aware. On another note, this one-eyed clone, Wolf, would be cool to see in an episode or an arc that wasn't so boring. It's sad to see him wasted here in this arc. When the Republic chose him to lead, I feel as if they would choose a clone captain that came off as more empathetic. Anyway, R2-D2 turns back on the power. Then C-3PO and R2-D2 are brought by the not Ewoks to a hole with a seal covering most of it. Next, C-3PO falls down because of an earthquake and R2-D2 flies down to get him. They walk forward and see that there are walking and talking trees. These trees were disturbed because the people up top have let in toxic air and pointed them towards an area to meet with someone. They walk and meet a transgender golem who tells them the exact same thing the trees said about the air being toxic, but explaining this is why the earthquakes are happening. So what was the purpose of the trees? Honestly, the previous scene could have been written out entirely and the episode wouldn't have changed. That scene is useless just like this arc. They're clearly padding. After the redundant exposition, she gives them a riddle. Okay, why? She could have just told them. She doesn't have incentive. This is obviously reminiscent of Riddles in the Dark from The Hobbit. However, it actually made sense. Bilbo and Gollum made a bet on a game of riddles. If Bilbo won, Gollum would show him the way out. If Gollum won, he would eat Bilbo. While in the Clone Wars, her motivation was never clear. There's poison gas filling her world. Does she want to die?
Yes! Dr. Rabbit's Suicide World Tour!
When she leaves, there's some classic banter between R2-D2 and C-3PO as they try to solve it. R2-D2 figures it out that the correct answer was a river while C-3PO thought he thought of it first. They go flying in the air and land without crashing violently. They go to the seal, close it, and the community is saved. The not Ewoks could have solved this a while ago if they just got a bunch of them and just pushed it over. They didn't need the Republic's help. Once they're about to leave, some random not Ewok child hugs R2-D2, which is supposed to be a heartwarming moment. It's not. Not because I am a heartless bastard, but because there was no precursor to this at all. Not once was this relationship ever established. It was completely forced in at the last second to have that "aww" moment, or just to show a kid did something in the episode, even though he didn't participate. The next episode is an uncreative mess. It begins with them on a ship back to Coruscant to help Padme with a party. So this episode takes place right before Padme orders them to go on errands, which is the same episode where she sends R2 to get fruit in spite of the astromech having vital information for the Republic. Also, it had this scene. Back to the story. General Grievous comes in and wins? What? But it's not as if it's the beginning of the episode and circumstances can change, right? Anyway, R2-D2 knows how to pilot the ship, outmaneuvers and defeats a droid pilot. A droid pilot can't even beat droids that are used for maintenance. Come on. At least their reactor was hit, which made them land on a planet and run into a bunch of gummy bears. They get shocked and are strapped to the ground. Wait, this seems too familiar. You can tell how this is heading. So the gummy bears come off as devout villagers who talk about Big Jesus as a leader who leads by intimidation. R2 and C-3PO meet him and convinces them that they mean no harm. Then, C-3PO pats R2 on the back fairly hard, which causes R2 to lose his balance and kills the Big Jesus. C-3PO declared it was an accident, but the gummy bears are suddenly happy. Okay. It was unintentional, but C-3PO hit way too hard for it to be a believable accident. Just saying. The gummy bears want him to be their leader, but he unaccepts it. Instead, C-3PO asks for the 3 smartest folks from the gummy bears. He asks them to vote, and they do. He declares that they are a democracy, and then the gummy bears start murdering each other. George couldn't hide his inner commie.
And I used to say this all the time when people, back when Russia was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and they'd say, "Oh, but aren't you so glad that you're in America?" I said, "Well, I know a lot of Russian filmmakers. They have a lot more freedom than I have."
Due to the fact that they were losing power, they had to make another emergency landing, which makes them land on a neighboring moon and start walking around. They see an animal and C-3PO said it was a monkey. However, they get captured by redneck aliens and take them to their dear leader. Oh, look, another reference. After the dear leader murders someone, R2 goes searching for this obvious fraud. I know they're rednecks, but do they have to be this dumb? R2 finds pit droids, I think that's what they're called, and exposes them. The rednecks come in and shoot up their command center like incels. As R2 and C-3PO are going out in the distance, there's a massive explosion. Huh, I guess those rednecks are incels. Next, they realize they're low on power and decide to rest up before they can recharge. The show makes it out as if they're gonna die, even though we already know that's not the case. Why does the show pretend that these characters are gonna die when we see them in the movies that come after this? Continuing with the story, they are captured by pirates and taken on the ship to do droid fighting. Once they go into the pit against Robo McGregor, General Grievous' ship decides to use the ship as target practice. As a gash forms in the arena, everyone is sucked out and C-3PO holds on to R2-D2 and flies into the Cis-Male's hangar. C-3PO almost blows their cover, but R2 stops him mid-sentence. They are sent to be cremated, but before they are vaporized, the Republic show up to attack, like there was any threat of them dying. The Republic won and Grievous fled. Just tell me how Grievous is still employed. Earlier, they made it clear that he captured a Jedi, but in that same episode in which he did that action, he loses her. There will be more on Grievous later. Believe me. It ends with C-3PO wanting to share the story with Wolf, who doesn't want to hear it. We can assume that this was likely a bottle episode because what does this have to do with the main plot? You might be asking, for any show, if it's a bottle episode, does that automatically mean it's going to be bad? No. Due to the fact that cheap doesn't necessarily mean bad. Ideally, these types of episodes rely on the writing. Unfortunately, they shoehorned in a bunch of unfunny references, and this arc just lacked logic. The next arc we're going to cover is with Mace Windu and Jar Jar Binks. Yeah, I ain't kidding. It starts out with a planet full of 4 sensitive duck aliens in need. Their queen, Julia, makes a request for Senator Jar Jar Binks, while no one should accompany him during his trip. This is an alien race and their queen is named Julia. Talk about a lack of creativity. Surprisingly, the Jedi Council actually used their brains and realized this is idiotic. They decide Mace Windu should go with Jar Jar on this mission. They arrive, the duck aliens say that their request was only for Jar Jar and take away Mace's lightsaber. I mean, these beings really didn't enforce their rules that well. They could have been tougher on Mace and forced him to stay on the ship for not following their orders. So they go into the Congress building and are told that noblemen are disappearing. Jar Jar swears he'll put an end to this. The Queen calls off everyone to leave and walks up to Jar Jar. And then kisses him? Why would anyone want to get funky with Jar Jar? Does George Lucas honestly think that this atrocity of a character is a sexy beast now? Actually, now that I think of it, those big floppy ears, the jutting nose, the endiform build, the drooping posture, and especially those succulent yellow eyes. But in all honesty, at least he's thick. Anyway, Jar Jar and Julia decide interpretive dancing is more important than solving this case. While Mace tries to cockblock them because he doesn't want to be known for getting less pussy than Jar Jar. Okay, fine, he does it because he wants to complete the mission. After Mace tricks the guards, he barges in on them and Julia orders to kick him out. Before Mace is escorted, he tells Jar Jar, who's leaving the room, that they need to solve this case. Then, they hear Julia scream and rush to the scene to find her missing. From the prior events, Mace gets his lightsaber back. Next, a random duck guard comes to take them to this ancient structure. I don't think they need the Republic to crack this case when there is a known temple. I mean, it doesn't take a Sherlock to figure this out. So they go in, Jar Jar is taken by tribal men and turns them invisible because of reasons. What was the purpose of that? This would make sense if the guard was invisible as well, but he's clearly not, so it just makes him look as if he's just struggling with nothing. They take him and cage him for his atrocities for being annoying. He finds out he's gonna be sacrificed because they're gonna strip the Force out of their victims. Jar Jar starts communicating with Mace, which gives him his position, with a little bit of the Force as well. If I was one of these tribal men, I would confiscate the communication devices first. Mace finds Jar Jar's location and sees that this is where the nobleman and the Queen were held captive. They start to fight and Jar Jar gets obnoxiously lucky like he always does. Mace is fighting without his lightsaber. Maybe he doesn't want to kill them. Never mind. They go after the Queen, but she is taken to a rocket. So these tribal people can afford or make a spaceship, but can't afford or make guns, I guess. In conclusion, Jar Jar swears to the remaining noblemen that him and Mace will find the Queen. Next episode is called Disappeared Part 2. Why that? It's so uncreative. The Dunes of Destiny sounds so much better. It starts out with Mace and Jar Jar leave for the moon of Zardosa Stick to find Queen Julia. The tribal people land and put Julia on sleeping powder. They need to take a train to this ritual place. Why don't they fly there instead of landing in the city? There is no point in them landing there. They could have fixed this by having a quick space duel by making their ship damaged so they have to make an emergency landing. So Mace and Jar Jar land on the planet and use their instincts to find the Queen's location. As they patrol through the city, they find Queen Julia yelling for Jar Jar. Wow, that magical sleeping powder is worse than NyQuil. They have this chase sequence and you see the first bad guy with a machine gun, but he dies. After some of that Jar Jar BS, they fight some monster and Mace interrogates one of them to get information on the whereabouts. They need transportation, so they take these mutilated horses instead of their ship that doesn't seem that far away. On their way there, Mother Talzin, who's the Night Sister leader and a fairly important character to the series, lands on the planet at the ritual's location. Once Mace and Jar Jar reach their destination, they fight some large rock people who die in 3 seconds because Jar Jar is just such a lucky ducky. They have this fight scene and save Queen Julia last second. Mother Talzin died because she forgot to wear sunscreen. So this is the last time we're going to see Mother Talzin in some time. What a send-off. There was one unanswered question that bothered me the most. Why are Jar Jar and Julia in love? All we know is that they knew each other from prior events. That's it. Now, we're gonna view the Cancerous Kids arc. It begins with a bunch of kids running to Ahsoka. She says it is time for the gathering. Her Padawan Pedro asked her what the gathering is. Before she answered, she oddly said all the younglings' names.
Pedro, Kenobi, Biff, Katuni, Zat, and Gunji.
Did they add this part afterwards because the writers forgot to say one of their names in the episode? Oh, she answered that it's when they get to construct their lightsabers. A Padawan should already know this. The education system fails us again. So the gathering is held on Not Hoth. As they walk through the snowstorm and approach a gate, Ahsoka commanded that they all have to use the Force to open it. Once they walk in, they see Yoda sitting down crisscross applesauce with his normal apparel. This planet is clearly cold. Shouldn't he have a different outfit? Back to the story, Yoda announces what the gathering is, even though as the audience we already know what it is. Next, Yoda opens a window so the sunlight can go through and melt the glacier, blocking the entrance to the cave where the crystals lie. Then Ahsoka announces that they are timed because daylight will end, and once that occurs, it will freeze the door over. Once they are inside, Zat finds the sun only rises every 19 days. Pedro said he can survive here, a place where there is no food, and decides to leave the pack because he wants to get his crystal first in spite of Katuni's wishes. Katuni then moves on with the rest of the pack following her and agrees with Chewbacca that Pedro is selfish. Did we really need that dialogue? The pack moves into a room in which there are 3 doors. Zat suggests that they close their eyes and point to a doorway. Where they pointed is the path they follow. Katuni and Zach pick the same doorway, as does Chewbacca and Kenobi, while Biff is the one that has to go on the path by himself. After that outcome, Biff doesn't want to follow through because he's scared of monsters, however his friends convince him otherwise. Back to Pedro, he seemingly finds his crystal. Back to Zat and Katuni, Katuni sees a crystal up top, but Zat can't. He says that the crystal is destined for her because it's only tangible to her. Before he goes off on a different route to find his crystal, he gives her some words of encouragement. While with Kenobi and Chewbacca, they come across a pond. Chewbacca hears whistling and sees the crystal while Kenobi cannot. She suggests that he has to wait due to the fact that the sun made the ice melt and it will freeze over once the sunlight dies down. She leaves as he waits. Back to Biff, he sees a crystal located in a rock structure that emulates a monster. The episode jumps to Kenobi. She starts complaining about not finding any crystals, but then falls down into a pit full of them. As the show goes back to Ahsoka and Yoda, Pedro comes out of the closet. Once he shows his crystal, we find out that it's just an icicle, so Pedro has to go back in. We go back to Katuni, who is still climbing. And Zach gets frustrated at his iPhone 3 because they pick up multiple crystal locations but he can't see them, which causes him to destroy his smartphone. A little extreme but okay. It cuts back to Biff, who moves from cover to get closer, while Kenobi feels hopeless because there are too many options to choose from. While Chewbacca gets tired of autistically screeching. Katuni and Biff are so far successful of reaching their crystals. Kenobi uses the Force to get her crystal. Zat uses the Force to locate it and uses his iPhone 3 as a bomb. He just presses a couple of buttons for it to blow up. I'm not sure how that works or why would they give that to children if it's that easy to detonate. Anyway, he finds his crystal. Chewbacca eventually slides to his crystal and retrieves it. As Katuni is running back, she slips on the floor which collapses. She falls down into a pit in which there is an ice window. Pedro, who is still running to find his crystal, hears Katuni. He comes to her location. She says he needs to help her, but he leaves her for dead to find his crystal. A little too apathetic for a child if you ask me. Outside of the cave, Kenobi suggests that they should help them, but Yoda says that's illegal. Katuni starts crying, but Pedro decides to come back. They use the Force to release her and she says that she knew he would return. Her crying tells us something else. From his heroic action, Pedro finds his crystal illuminating in the rubble. So he tells Katuni to make a run for the exit without him. Katuni slides under the ice door while Pedro is shortly behind her and breaks through the ice. Yoda said that since it was made of water, it was easy to break if you have a moxie. However, the ice looked pretty thick. I get it if he used the Force, but he clearly didn't. Yoda then does a review of what they all learned. It would have been better if the show kept it subtle so we can interpret it instead. I'm starting to hate children. The episode commences with them on a ship back to Coruscant. Ahsoka walks into the room of the cancer's kid and talks about how they will construct their lightsabers. So the kids meet the droid, Huge Wang, who helps them construct their lightsabers. Huge Wang talks to Chewbacca and asks him how his lightsabers should be formed. It corrects him that he needs to feel about how his lightsaber should be created, not how he imagined it. How can it tell that he didn't feel anything from his previous statement? It's a robot. In space, Hondo and his crew are flying towards the ship. Also, Why is Hondo's ship a flying saucer? That's such a boring design. It lacks that Star Wars immersion. They should have made it with a hull of a regular ship, have some cannons on the side, maybe some wings on the side as well, give it a brown coating, voila. Anyway, Hondo wants the crystals because they're valuable and decides to board. It cuts back to the kids constructing their lightsabers. It's kinda noticeable the lightsaber crystals do look dull for something powerful and considerably valuable. Getting back on track, Pedro constructs his lightsaber very quickly. After his creation, he said he could kill Grievous and all the kids started to laugh. I mean, he probably could. Huge Wayne comes over to analyze it and says he made a bomb, not a lightsaber. As the children are creating their weapons like the incels they are, they get boarded by Hondo. Ahsoka rushes to the cockpit and only R2 is there. Wouldn't they have professional pilots on the ship? I know Ahsoka and R2 can fly, but they should have brought more pilots. Plus, there are no clones and no guards on the ship. You're going through space to train future soldiers without them being protected. I mean, there's a lot you can run into in space. Additionally, where's Yoda? Do you want to become a popsicle? Ahsoka says that Hondo's ship was aiming for the hyperdrive and has successfully done so. The droid orders all the kids to give them their crystals. Everyone done so except for Pedro. Ahsoka finds out that they are pirates and orders them to hide in the vent. Pedro wants to fight, and Ahsoka said they are, but not what they're expecting. One of the kids asked if it was a part of their training. Of course not! As she closes the hatch and crawls over, she talks way too loud when the minions are right above.
Hondo says find the kids and bring them to him. Dead or alive? Yes.
We must have courage, young Jedi. Kenobi and Zat, I need you to get to the cockpit, find R2 and secure it. The rest of you, take Professor Huang and seal yourselves inside the hold and wait for my command.
Ahsoka will go to the airlocks to suck all the pirates out. The minions come back and said they had no sight of them, even though they should have heard them in the vent down below. Hondo calls them nincompoops and tells them that they're probably in the vents. He orders them to gas them, but the crew is hesitant because they are just kids. He motivates them with the fact that the crystals are valuable. Remember for later that Hondo was perfectly fine with killing kids. Back to Kenobi and Zat, they make it to the cockpit and are spotted by one of the pirates. R2 zaps him and he falls down unconscious. As the kids are getting gassed, they have to get up and are caught. Pedro takes out his lightsaber, which he clearly knows will not function properly. He uses it as a bomb instead and blows it up in the crew's face. I don't know how the crystal could have survived that. In spite of it blowing up, the crew falls unconscious. The children run off and Kenobi complains that Pedro could have killed them. Pedro says that they need to fight, and Huge Wang says that he cannot aid them in battle. Kenobi changes her mind really quickly and sides with Pedro. Ahsoka makes it to the engine room to reroute the power. She then asks Kenobi and Zat if the rest made it, and they say no. We cut back to the kids on the run, and they trap two minions in a room where they get attacked by training droids. As the kids keep running, they get sandwiched into pirates. However, Principal Ahsoka runs in, blows away Hondo's army, and decides to have a talk with Hondo about his inappropriate behavior. Why didn't she use the Force on Hondo? Hondo explains his motivation. They clash, and Ahsoka doesn't use the Force at all in the battle. As the kids are running, the droid gets his head blown off, both his arms, yet he takes on a minion by himself.
I have been damaged and cannot aid you in battle.
What a liar. Ahsoka launches them back into Hondo's ship, but she gets hit by one of the minions. It gets launched into the invading ship. The kids are in the cockpit. Zat says he can fix Huge Wang, and they realize Ahsoka is gone with the pirates. At Hondo's ship, since he loses out on money, he decides to use Ahsoka as a bargaining chip. Believe it or not, it gets worse. The first scene begins with the cancerous kids making contact with Kenobi's fleet. Obi-Wan promises that he will send Commander Cody and a squadron to rescue them and tells them not to fight the pirates to save Ahsoka, despite the kids being so close to Florum, aka Hondo's world. Once their Skype call finishes, their fleet is ambushed by Grievous, which stalls the rescue. At the cancerous kid's ship, the Crucible, most of the kids accomplish constructing their lightsabers, except for Kenobi. However, it should be Pedro who struggles with this task. In the previous episode, Kenobi seemed fine constructing it, but the ship shook from the hijacking. Plus, Pedro wasn't successful at it last episode. Since they've been waiting for a while, Pedro thought they might as well rescue Ahsoka, while Katooni thinks the opposite. They have a vote, and Biff and Chewbacca side with Pedro. Then Zat and Kenobi come in to announce the ship has an issue. The filtering system is leaking coolant and it will make the ship explode. So it's only logical to land on the planet Florum to let the engine cool. I'm going to interject the problem with the chemistry of the cancerous kids. I think Pedro has too much skill. I don't think he's a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu or whatever you want to call it, but his skills takes from the others. When I first watched this, Katooni seemed more fitted as a leader while Pedro was more too cool for school. The guy that can improvise but is arrogant. Sure, he overcame his selfishness, but that shouldn't develop him into a leader right away. Versus Katooni was already the team-oriented individual. Since he can seemingly wield a lightsaber better than the rest of the kids, he's the leader with the quick wits as well. Plus, he can survive for nearly 3 weeks without food. That's pretty impressive. There might be 6 cancerous kids, but the focal points of the group are clearly Katooni and Pedro. Katooni seems a little too weak compared to Pedro because Pedro can do too much. He needs to be nerfed. In 21 Jump Street, Jonah Hill was the brains while Shannon Tatum was the bronze, and it was evident that they had great chemistry. Back to the episode. At Forum, Hondo is with 2 wrinkly women holding Ahsoka hostage. Ahsoka tells Hondo that he should let her go or else. Of course he disagrees because he wants to sell her to make money. Wait, what? My question is, if he can't sell Ahsoka to the Republic or the CAS because of his prior incidences, then who can he sell her to? Since she knows the Force, who would want her as a sex slave, or as a slave of any means? It would be dangerous to have her around. So Hondo taunts her and we get back to the space battle. The battle looks cool, but those Republic ships emulate regular jet fighters. Why couldn't they make it something that belongs in Star Wars? Anyway, Grievous boards the ship and you see his only badass scene by Grievous in the entire show. Back to the kids, they land on Florum. Zat tells R2 to fix the droid and Pedro orders Kenobi to stay with the ship. She gets mad at him but reminds her that she was the only one that played Combat Flight Simulator.
Kenobi, you stay with the ship.
And who put you in charge?
We're going to need to make a quick escape, and you're the only one that had flight simulator training at the temple.
Oh, seeing as you put it like that.
This hurts her likability as a character. I know she is a kid, but come on, you don't have to be that snappy. Once they put their feet on land, Zat's Samsung Galaxy accesses Wi-Fi and GPS Hondo's base. At the base, Ahsoka rightfully questions the logic of selling her. According to him, there are criminals who would pay a lot for a Jedi, especially for a female Jedi. Why? I want to know why. Yet the show refuses to answer the questions. It makes no sense why any criminal would want a Jedi as a slave. That's a hazard waiting to happen. Back at Obi-Wan's cruiser, he and Cody decide to retreat with the promise of leaving Grievous a partying gift. Oh dear God. At Florum, Biff spots a ship and sees a traveling carnival act. No, I am not joking. So Pedro and kids walk into the road, get run over, and the episode is over. Okay, I was actually kidding right there. So Pedro and his fellow Tombers stop the carnies. Pedro asks if they're on their way to the pirate stronghold, which the absurdly large mustache man replies with a yes. Mustache man asks them who they are and how they got out here. Shouldn't he ask about their curiosity about his business's destination? I guess he doesn't care even though he should. Pedro answers that their ship crashed and they are stranded, but this is good for absurdly large mustache man. He asks why and Pedro says that they are acrobats. Again, it's a little suspicious that a group of people who are stranded want to join a circus. Why isn't he questioning this? They impress him and he invites them onto their show. We cut to the cruiser and it's this scene. Can we go back to the cancerous kids, please? The circus arrives to the base, and I am wondering why would Hondo and his crew be into this? Based off of my instincts, pirates usually dig rum and hookers. Why couldn't it be a ship that is delivering some sort of beverage? The kids stealthily hop on the ride, and they find a way to sneak into the base. To top it off, absurdly large mustache man has been here before, and his group had such a bad performance that Hondo decapitated his employees. Alright, 3 things. Why would Hondo bring the circus back if the last time was so bad it was worthy of execution? Wouldn't he decapitate the absurdly large mustache man as well if it was that bad? Stepping into absurdly large mustache man's shoes, why would you do business with Hondo again if he murdered your employees? Back to the story, Pedro spots Hondo with the lightsabers and sees Ahsoka as well. Ahsoka recognizes them right away. Hondo yells he loves a kiddie act despite in the last episode he was fine with killing them and clearly gave them a run for his money. They make him a part of the act and he joins in. Katooni takes Ahsoka's lightsabers without anyone noticing. I guess the pirates are too drunk to be astute, so Hondo stands on a plank as Biff will jump down to launch Hondo in the air. Hondo has a crash landing, Katooni sneaks behind and releases Ahsoka. Then Ahsoka and her young tumors leave with a tank as blaster shots go over their heads. Ahsoka was happy with them even though they didn't follow orders. She said that herself learned from her master to bend the rules. Pedro calls Kenobi to get the ship and the episode ends, but not the arc unfortunately. It begins with the kids being chased by pirates. Their ship gets shot and Katooni had the audacity to say,
I think they're so upset that we tricked them.
"What were you going to expect? They'll live and let live and give you chocolates and reparations for their heinous acts?" Next, Pedro adds that they will be graceful once they leave their planet. That's a stretch. Even if it's true, they're not that menacing of villains after all. Back to the story, they make contact with Kenobi and she successfully repairs Huge Wang. Ahsoka orders her to start the engines and head to their position. Once Kenobi reaches their area, she opens up the boarding dock. Ahsoka decides to defend the ship and uses a mask as a last resort to drive the tank. She could have had one of the kids pilot it and tell them to get up when they were about to take off. Anyway, Biff is able to grab hold of Kenobi's hands and hangs on for his dear life. The pirate shoots their tank and shooks the mask off. Pedro decides to become DD to stabilize the driving. Chewbacca then grabs onto Biff's legs, and how in hell can Kenobi hold on to two people? I could believe Chewbacca because he's a Wookiee, but not her, whatever species she is. To bug me even more, Katooni and Zach grab on, and there's no way she could still be holding them, especially on a downward ramp. The engines of the ship get shot, and R2, Huge Wang, and Kenobi jump down. The ship soon crashes, flips over the tank, and they get captured by the pirates. As the pirates are taking them back to the base, they notice their base is being taken by the CIS. Inside, the CIS kills the guards with Grievous leading the charge. Grievous throws out the hologram of Count Dooku, saying he wants revenge because of the time he imprisoned him. Hondo is mad because everything of his will now belong to the CIS and they escort him out. Back to the cancerous kids, the pirates overlook their lost base. Ahsoka makes the logical conclusion that Obi-Wan's fleet has been overrun and the Separatists are in control of the system. Katooni asks what to do, then gets interrupted by one of the pirates who says that he thinks that he should turn to Jedi for his freedom. Ahsoka says Grievous won't bargain and just kill all of us. She suggests that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The pirates say Hondo has a private fleet, but only he knows where it is, which leads to them getting in the base to rescue Hondo. Once again, evil goes against evil. I don't mind this in storytelling, but it's a little damning it happens regularly in the show. Ventress vs Dooku, Ventress vs Savage, Maul vs Death Watch, Death Watch vs Death Watch, Maul vs Palpatine, Bounty Hunters vs the CIS, Bounty Hunters vs Bounty Hunters. This makes evil look powerless. Now, if they're allied with each other, it's a different game. The show really displays it, and when they do, it doesn't last long. Back to the episode, R2 brings in a tank to act as a diversion. The stick droids ask for its ID number. R2 dodges the request by insulting the stick droid, which distracts the guards from the Lazy Town crew. Also, the stick droid doesn't ask for its ID number a second time because they somehow get by all of them off screen mostly and make it to Hondo's cell. Hondo is flabbergasted by the fact that the Jedi came back to rescue him and thought that there was something else to it. They explain their motivation and Hondo tries to cover up his secret fleet. They already know about his secret fleet. Hondo is mad at his men for a second, and then he stops caring. Hondo lacks fate in the Lazy Town crew, but Huge Wang interjects that this is the best batch of younglings he has seen in over 1,000 generations. That's a little absurd for kids who aren't that mature. All the kids display their lightsabers except for Katooni, for her is incomplete. Kenobi was the one that was struggling earlier, but then they made it Katooni for reasons. Katooni isn't very confident in spite of Yoda saying she overcame that hurdle in the first episode of this arc. In whole, Pedro became less selfish, Biff got over his cowardice, Kenobi gained hope, but Katooni, who's the most mature, struggles with her main flaw the most. She seems the most deserving out of the whole group. To get back on track, Hondo gets way into the creation of a lightsaber. He said that it is rare, but he seems he would only care for something that would make him richer. This follows up with Katooni succeeding in cutting down Hondo. Hondo still doesn't have much faith and says that he doesn't like bringing kids into battle. Ahsoka rightfully questions Hondo's sudden change of heart because he tried to murder them. He responds that today is a new day and he likes kids.
Well, today is a new day. And lucky for you, today, I like children.
He's a pedo now? Great. Grievous is notified that there's been an outbreak and commands his troops to kill them. Once the Lazy Town crew enters the battlefield, they just run out there and succeed. This shouldn't work. There's hundreds of droids and they can't hit one of them? The pirates have nothing to deflect and Hondo just has a sword. The Jedi younglings just got their lightsabers yesterday. They shouldn't be able to deflect thousands of blaster shots. Ahsoka should be the only one able to survive this tactic. They get on the tank that R2 snuck in on. Imagine if the stick droid actually did his job and got the ID number. Most of the kids get on the tank while Katooni jumps on the bike with Hondo. Once they leave the base's perimeter, Grievous chases after them. As the chase is going on, Hondo's bikers break off to his covert hangar. Katooni questions Hondo's logic of leaving without the squad. Then, Hondo suggests that she should join their team. Why are you inviting a kid onto your crew? However, Hondo gets convinced because she said that they trusted him. When does Hondo care about trust? Honestly, this show should know their characters better. Also, why does he like kids so much?
How old are you?
39.
39. You said you were 35 online.
35. 39.
But Hondo's a bachelor. There's no way he should be into someone as young as her. Back to the kids. Grievous jumps onto the tank and the droid orders R2 to shake Grievous off. R2 shakes too much and crashes the tank. Everyone survives and Grievous starts crawling through the smoke. However, Hondo's ship arrives and Ahsoka commands everyone to make a run for the ship while she'll fight off Grievous. This fight is pretty poorly choreographed because Grievous could have killed her twice. And please don't tell me he's a guy who toys around. Right before Ahsoka jumps on the ship, you can tell they move Grievous back during the second cut. They do this in a lot of media, but it was way too noticeable here. I picked it up on my first viewing. She jumps onto the ship, Grievous autistically screeches and gets shot at. Once they get onto the Republic cruiser, Hondo is asking for a lot of reparations. Since he doesn't get it, he leaves an unappreciation in spite of his previous acts against the Republic from the prior episode. He has done acts against the Republic before. I'm surprised he hasn't gotten some form of punishment. Hondo and Katooni nod at each other. I would care about this heartwarming moment if it was developed. The cancerous kids are recognized for their heroics. Huge Wang brings up that this reminded him of the time Yoda was a youngling. A much more interesting story than this one probably, and the arc concludes. The next arc is something else. The Delinquent Squad arc questioned whether I was in hell, so let's get this over with. It starts off with a stealth mission being debriefed by Mace to droids on capturing this MacGuffin, the encryption module. What I don't get is, shouldn't a mission be programmed to the droids, not told to them? Next we meet our first protagonist, Whack. He comes in late and interrupts the meeting. Not very disciplined for a droid going on a military mission. Then we meet our other protagonist, Colonel Gasson, who is a midget who I'll be referring to as Frogger. Unfortunately for both our protagonists, they lack any form of likability. They're both whiny and egotistical. They have this relationship where Whack refers to Frogger with his improper title.
Corporal?
Colonel.
While Frogger is racist towards droids.
We have to rely on my training. Something you droids don't have.
Back to the story, Whack's only here on this mission because he's a pilot. The Astromechs or Delinquent Squad are given devices for this mission, while R2 just gets enhanced boosters. This is all supplied by this squid with a German accent who has a thing for droids.
Cutie Katie, this coil is a remote-controlled magnet. It can attract any metal object in a 7-meter radius. But when dealing with mines, you'll want to take care. The magnetic force is extremely powerful.
I have no freaking clue why he broke the fourth wall right there. On their way retrieving the module from the CIS cruiser, Whack thought it was a good idea to dissipate orders and go directly towards the CIS ship. Once they land on the hangar, the stick droids escort them out for questioning. Delinquent Squad ambushes one of the guards. The other stick droid notices it and does not shoot at them immediately. Why? Frogger orders the droid C4 to make a power outage happen, but it fails. Frogger finds out that super battle droids are approaching their position. Whack begs to be a diversion in the most obnoxious way possible.
Please, let me do it. Come on, let me do it, please. Come on.
As Whack is getting the super battle droids' attention, they listen to its orders to go in the closet. They couldn't ask for clarity. I mean, they're guarding the ship and they decide to listen to some random droid. Why? Once the Delinquent Squad moves into the recently vacated hallway to perform the rest of the mission, Frogger makes the droid Beezy hack into the system that is booby-trapped, in spite Whack warning Beezy that it's probably booby-trapped. Frogger gets mad because Beezy screwed up and Whack blames it on Frogger. Beezy should know how to hack into a system to avoid a booby trap. Frogger doesn't exactly know what to do and the red droid QT says he should do it, even though that's probably impossible. He says another droid should try. They continue into their argument. We find out that Frogger has no infield experience at all. He's just a strategist. During their nonsensical bickering, R2 opens the door. Once Frogger finishes giving his orders, Whack gets mad that they aren't getting enough respect by being called disrespectful names, like Cyclops, but Whack also insults him by calling him Shorty right afterwards. It's the military. You're not supposed to care about being treated nicely, especially if you act as if you're a 10-year-old. And plus, if you act like a 10-year-old, you shouldn't even be in the military. As the audience, we're supposed to feel bad for this droid, even though we had no emotional connection to it at all. As they go in and get the MacGuffin, the commander and his combat droids come in and lose to Delinquent Squad. How? Shouldn't combat droids be more apt in this situation than maintenance droids? Just look, that droid should have been able to kill him. They accomplish the mission and decide to bring BZ. As they are leaving, the security alarm goes off and they just walk past the guards. Assumingly, there is no information given about who caused the trouble. Plus, it's a little suspicious that a bunch of maintenance droids are coming from the same direction of the incident. Due to the fact of complete stupidity by the CIS, Delinquent Squad gets off the ship. Next episode. They're on their way back to Coruscant, and they fix BZ. However, a comet storm comes in which can destroy their ship. How does Whack not see this coming? Shouldn't he avoided it on his way there? One of the parts of the ship gets damaged and the astromechs have to go out and try to fix it. To top off Whack's resume, he doesn't know ship terminology, even though he's programmed to pilot.
We need the primary motivators reestablished now!
Forget that. We need the engines to come on.
That's what I'm saying!
Once R2 turns the engines back on, the ship accelerates and the droid almost flew off, but they form a Congo line of their suction cups and live to tell this awful tale. As it goes on, they have to make an emergency crash landing on a planet named Abathar because their ship got too damaged. This planet has a desert landscape, yet there's no sun. Wait, where does all the light come from in the first place? So Frogger was giving a plan, and the droids decide to go forward for no reason. Frogger finds out the droids are going straight and becomes furious. And this is where the really nonsensical stuff begins. Frogger goes on a rant about how he was trained while they are programmed, while Whack brings up that since his training was drilled into him, that he is programmed and no better than the droids. So being programmed makes them go straight, which isn't exactly the most reliable tool for survival. Plus, there is no sun. It's not as if they know where north is. Frogger wants to go back to the ship, but he looks back and sees that there are no tracks. Whack realized it earlier, and Frogger is mad that he didn't bring up his observation. As Frogger storms off, Whack asks if he can be the leader if Frogger dies. This just pisses off Frogger. R2 finds a ship, and Frogger says that they're going in a circle. It ends up not being their ship, and sees a skeleton, while R2 sees a decapitated droid. Frogger then screams into the sky, seeing that there is no hope. The droids get a map of the entire planet and contemplate what will Frogger do. Whack suggests that he'll commit suicide, which would make him the leader. The astromechs want R2 to be the leader, but Whack says astromechs aren't capable of leading a squadron. That's the equivalent of someone commentating on their black opponent and saying he can't lead because he is black to an all-black crowd. Frogger keeps screaming out there and sees a settlement. And of course, it was just a hallucination. Then, he starts to go insane. Delinquent Squad thought it was a good time to leave. Whack suggests it should lead, and the astromechs just ignore it. Whack then complains that he is considered just a pilot.
That is not true. I am more than just a pilot!
Pretty hypocritical if you ask me. How can we as audience root for Frogger and Whack when they're just so uncharismatic? They should have made R2 the protagonist. Whack and Frogger are sitting in the desert, and Frogger goes on a philosophical rant about death only being certain. Whack says he shouldn't give up, even though it wanted him to commit suicide earlier. He says he was trained to make rational decisions, yet he wants to change his way because the desert is difficult to survive in. Frogger says Whack is right and celebrates with glee because he says Whack is more than just a pilot. Then, out of nowhere, these ostriches come running towards them. I was hoping they would die like Mufasa. Frogger says he needs to trust his instincts by trusting the bird's instincts, but that's like a rational thought. What is this episode's point? Frogger, I guess, was never trained to survive in the wilderness. You learned that in the Boy Scouts, yet Frogger didn't learn that being trained for the Grand Army of the Republic? Anyway, they see a town in the distance. The birds find this Sunny D oasis that is connected to a town. Whack asks Frogger how did he know, and he said he trusted the animal's instincts. Thanks, show. I really need that to be told to me again. Frogger and Whack noticed that the Astromechs made it there. What I noticed was they didn't even bother to animate any people in this town. But what's even more damning is that Whack saw them with the map. It could have told Frogger that they have it. Frogger and Whack are in disbelief, even though Whack saw them with the map and has the audacity to call them stupid lucky droids. I would say R2 should be the protagonist of this arc. However, this arc shouldn't even exist. Frogger gives Whack the order to round up the Astromechs so Frogger could drink some refreshing Sunny D and promotes Whack to Corporal. It ends with Whack bossing around the other Astromechs. We're only halfway there, and I'm living on a prayer. Frogger translates what R2 said, that this planet reminds them of Tatooine. Wow, I think as viewers we could have drawn that connection. I mean, Sebulba is right there. Now, there's citizens at this town. Didn't see that last episode. So one of the Astromechs make a comment that this town seems dangerous, but Frogger denounces it. Immediately after, an Ewok wannabe robs a normal-sized man with a thumbtack. I know it's not a big deal, but he could have stepped on the convict. Frogger says that he needs fuel. Then an Astromech thinks that it's a ship he's talking about. Frogger is talking about how hungry he is. For some reason he referred to it as fuel. He sees a diner and he says the dumbest line ever.
A diner, a place of eating.
You could have just left it at diner. He orders the Astromechs to scout the perimeter, while him and Whack enter the diner. Inside, Frogger announces himself as a part of the Republic. Why? He doesn't know the allegiance of this planet. So Googleface tells him that they're not welcome here. After Frogger spoke out against Googleface again, he chases them out with a knife and threatens to kill them. Frogger needs to find food, and Whack takes him to an alley with trash cans. They run into a clone that doesn't realize that he is a clone. After the interaction, Frogger has the audacity to say,
But I'm still hungry.
who thought this character was a good idea? The Astromechs discover that the CIS are on this planet as well. The clone, Gregor, asks his boss Googleface about him being a clone. He tells him that he's a dishwasher and says that he should never ask him about that ever again, like that ain't suspicious. D-Squad rounds up and they assume the clone has amnesia. Once they find his quarters and get in, they try to remind him of his true identity by showing him a holocron of Captain Rex. They find out that Gregor was a part of the Battle of Sarish, a battle that the Republic lost. Wouldn't that be cool to see in this show? A CIS victory. Also, the scene is pretty dark once Gregor starts talking about seeing a lot of dead clones. Talk about an abrupt tone change. I remember it was like a couple minutes ago.
I'm still hungry.
They convince Gregor to join in, and he cuts his hair to remind himself of his former self. They need to look for his armor, and so they go to the diner where he works. In there, Googleface comes in with Gregor's clone commando equipment. Why would he bring that in if he knew Gregor was gonna be there? That's just stupid. They defeat Googleface and he tries to convince Gregor one last time, but Gregor doesn't want to be a slave to the diner, but a slave to the Republic. Googleface also reveals that the CIS are here so they can blow up that Republic cruiser. Once they leave the diner, they form a plan and decide to take the CIS demo ship. During their execution of the plan, This scene was well choreographed for its action. Well, sort of. Also, there's this massive tone change, and Gregor decides to supposedly sacrifice himself. It has music as if it's from Medal of Honor. Just a second ago, the show's attitude was just like this.
Save yourselves!
As D Squad is leaving for the cruiser, the CIS base blows up. Just one more episode to go. The Liquid Squad flies to the cruiser, but are unable to communicate with them. Regardless, Frogger demands to get onto the ship because he demands recognition and a promotion. Did he not learn anything? They land, go into the ship, and realize that the people attending the ship are just holograms. At this point, the cruiser suddenly made a jump into hyperspace. As they keep investigating the bridge, they're not alone, and the CIS droids notice them. These droids couldn't hear them earlier, or notice a ship landed on their cruiser. How incompetent can they be? The stick droids get out of their stations, but could have just shot them with their blasters instead of climbing up and immediately getting knocked down. Once they leave, it cuts to droids with a detonator that they are taking to a control room. In the middle of a chase, Frogger has the audacity to say that he should give the orders around here.
Good thinking back there, but next time I give the orders, understood?
As they get to the detonator, they cheap out on wax animation of him rolling off of R2. They come in and kill the droids. Again, how are these astromech droids better at combat than these droids programmed for combat? Once the chasing stick droids arrive, they grab the dead droid and peek his head out to signal that the droids went another way. I mean, one of them should check on the bomb if anything happened to it, because that is the most important device on this ship. You'll find out about its importance later. I don't need to explain this scene again. Frogger's in disbelief that the ship is being used as a kamikaze, yet all the doors to the hangar opens up conveniently for some reason just to show him and the audience how many explosives there are. Apparently all the bombs we see are rhydonium from the planet Abathar, the setting of the 2 previous episodes. Once more, Frogger has the audacity to want to get off the ship because he was not given any orders to stop this. How dumb does this guy have to be? This guy is obsessed with getting recognized, yet he doesn't want to do something honorable, more importantly, logical. Plus, they're in hyperspace. It's not as if he has the option to leave. To top it off, Frogger doubts that this ship will do any damage to the Republic. It's not like he said something way different a second ago.
Mother of Quoth, there must be enough rhydonium in here to blow up the entire Republic fleet.
If we do not stop this ship before it explodes, it could cost the Republic thousands of lives.
Pure speculation.
What else would the CIS use this for? Killing pirates? Fireworks? There's no really other explanation. Then R2 has to remind Frogger that they can't leave when going into hyperspace. As they leave, R2 sees the Energizer Bunny, goes off the path, and takes it to the Liquid Squad for questioning. They find out that it's a Republic droid and there's more on this ship. Back at the bridge, the droid commander decides to release buzz droids to kill the intruders. During the questioning, a bunch of droids come out of the closet. They don't know much, but they do know that this cruiser is going to a system where this Republic Strategic Conference is held, while there's a buzz droid in the shadow listening. Wouldn't it have been nice if they at least explain how they got the cruiser? Would it be even better if they show it actually doing it? A CIS victory? The Liquid Squad and pals put 2 to 2 together and realize the Separatists' true intentions. To the show's credit, they do make note that they can't communicate with the Republic because they're in hyperdrive. They see the spy, R2 goes after it, and they slowly follow up. This droid can't even get through the door. And why is it on the ship? As they're looking around the hangar, they get ambushed by an army of buzz droids. R2 makes a ring of fire to protect them. BZ makes a run for the door and opens it up to space to suck out all the buzz droids, including itself. Since they are in hyperspace, shouldn't they all get sucked out? There's already an issue with people holding on for their dear life while getting sucked out without going into hyperspace. But this is by far the worst I've seen it. They make a eulogy for BZ after requested by the Energizer Bunny. Back to the bridge, the droid commander sees that they can't make contact with the buzz droids. The droid commander assumes that D Squad is alive and sends more droids to chase them down. As the Liquid Squad is marching through the hallway, Frogger goes over the plan again. The injured droids will go to the shuttle, while R2 will change the detonation time on the bomb so it can go off quicker. However, they're ambushed by stick droids and this useless droid perishes. The cruiser arrives at the conference and Obi-Wan says the conference can start now. There's no question for a random cruiser showing up. While Anakin does not want to be here because he thinks strategy is pointless. Why is he a general then? Anyway, Anakin notices the ship is coming in very fast. Back to the ship, D-Squad makes a dash for the transport ship. As they're about to leave, Frogger does not want to leave R2 behind, but they do so anyway because it's too late. R2 defeats the droid commander and detonates a bomb quicker than it was supposed to. The cruiser blows up and Delinquent Squad survives. My question is, how will R2 survive? Somehow, it only lost a leg. How? Just how? I give up. R2 is fixed up. Frogger praises R2 for the service and says he will serve Delinquent Squad anytime. Turns out that Frogger and Wack are assigned to the same platoon, blah 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 blah, arc over. The most damning part about this is that Cancerous Kids follows up with Delinquent Squad. 8 straight filler episodes. What were they thinking? At least it's over with. Hey guys, thanks for watching the video, and since I made part 1, I might as well make part 2. Just remember to comment, rate, share, and subscribe before you click off this video. Also, I do have a Patreon and will be making Patreon only content. So, anyway guys, see you guys next time.